That name is love. That name is love. He is love. He is love. He is love. He is love. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. What is that mountain?
I would tell myself, even though I don't feel anything right now, I know that one day I will live in the fruit of this moment. And that is the truth. I can say that right now, where I'm living in my life, in this moment, in this season, just being here right now, this is the fruit of that moment. Those many moments, actually, a long time ago, of hours and hours of sitting and just waiting on God and just pressing in, pouring out my heart, pouring out all that I can on Him. Whether or not I heard anything or saw anything or had any radical encounter, I just kept saying, I know that I will live in the fruit of this moment one day. And I kept pressing in. These are like the two keys, okay, for this connection. Fighting for that relationship. No offense in the heart. And pressing in, knowing that one day we'll live in that fruit of that moment. And I still do that to this day. Even now in my life, when I have those moments, I still tell myself, one day I will live in the fruit of this moment. I just want to share a verse. We're going to go into worship here pretty soon. I love this. 1 John 3:18. Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth. Let us not love with just words on a screen, but with action, with truth, with all that we are. Let us pour out our love on Jesus. Let's give Him all that we are and all that we have, because isn't He deserving of that kind of love? Doesn't He deserve all that we are and all that we have to pour out and to give to Him? This then is how we know that we belong to the truth, and how we set our hearts at rest in His presence whenever our hearts condemn us. For God is greater than our hearts, and He knows everything. I love this verse. It brings me so much peace. That no matter what is going on the outside, no matter what I'm feeling, no matter what kind of lies may be trying to get in, His voice is louder and His love is bigger. And He's so much bigger than all of that outside stuff. And it's so much easier to hear that, to hear His voice, to know His love, to have that moving and breathing alive inside of you when you have had an encounter with God's love. And if you have not had an encounter with God's love, I am so believing that that is going to happen for you during our time together here. So your heart can be at rest in His presence. It's what I want every day, that my heart would be at rest in His presence. Before we go into worship, I just want to share with you guys my encounter with God's love that I had. Some of you might have heard bits and pieces of it before. But I really believe that as I'm sharing this, that God's just going to release a grace in this room for you to have your own encounter with God's love. Whatever it looks like, however He wants to do it. I had a pretty rough weekend, and I was driving from out of town back into Reading, and it was a Sunday night, and we had a guest worship leader that night. His name's Anthony Skinner. Anyone know that name? Yes? And I got in and I was walking up towards the front, and I saw Chris Valentin, and I kind of was falling apart. I just needed a dad. And he looks at me and he knew it, he saw it, and he just went. And I ran over there and I hugged him, and I just was crying. Worship started, and all of a sudden, and let me just remind you again, okay? This is not a normal thing for me to just have these encounters, but I have one and I just live off of that until the next one. So I had this encounter. All of a sudden I see Jesus standing in front of me, and he's reaching for me like this, like he wants me to come to him. And I was terrified. I felt like I couldn't go to where he was. I felt ashamed. I felt scared. I felt like I didn't deserve to be close to him. I couldn't even look him in the face. And Jesus is completely irresistible. I always say that there are 3 things in my life that are completely irresistible to me. One is, of course, Jesus. Number 2 is my husband. And number 3 is chocolate. Completely irresistible. But anyways, so irresistible. I go to Jesus, I fall in his arms, and as I'm laying in his arms, I'm still feeling kind of afraid to really even look at him. All of a sudden, this thought comes into my mind, and I know this is not my thought. I would never, ever, ever in a million trillion years think this. And I think I need to ask him 2 questions. I need to ask him, how much do you love me? And what were you thinking when you created me? And as this thought comes into my mind, I'm thinking, no way, I am not asking those questions. Now here's what you need to know about me and why I was so afraid to ask those questions. One is, when I was a little girl, I had heard someone say something, and long story short, I got it in my head somehow that I was a mistake. I thought that I was supposed to be born a boy, but I was born a girl, and God made a really big mistake, and now here I am, just this big mistake, and I literally believed that my entire life. And to ask God, what were you thinking when you created me? I really believed that he would say to me, well, I made a mistake. I was trying to make a boy and came out a girl, and now I'm just trying to make the best of a bad situation. I know, it sounds ridiculous, huh? That's really what I believed. It's crazy. And then to ask him, how much do you love me? I felt like he'd say, well, you're a mistake, so how much could I love you? I mean, I think you're okay. I mean, this is what's going through my head. I know this sounds crazy, but these are the kind of lies that I was believing. And all of a sudden, out loud, in the natural, outside of my vision, okay, over the microphone, Anthony Skinner says, you need to ask God 2 questions. And my heart starts pounding. What? You need to ask God, how much do you love me? And what were you thinking when you created me?